1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All of it.
One of resistance.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Rebellion.
Rebellion is built on hope.
And redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Welcome, everybody, to Star Wars Reactions. We are back, and we have such a fun discussion today. We are going to have a blast. I have been looking forward to this since I saw episode 5, or part 5 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is a discussion I could not wait to have. So we're not going to hold back. I cannot wait. We're going to get this done. My name is Aaron Harris. Joining me is the incredible, the awesome, the David Motters. David, brother, how's it going?
Well, geez, better now from that intro, man. You helped me feel so good. No, I just like you, and I've said it before. There is no lack of energy to discuss these episodes, so definitely ready to react. I told listeners I was going to do my homework and read Charles Soule's 2017 Vader run. I did do that over the weekend, and I have a lot to share from that. And so, yeah, just tons of stuff to talk about, to react to, and let's get into it.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and not hold back anything. Let's get this party started. We're going to be discussing Obi-Wan Kenobi Part 5 this week. It was released on Wednesday, June 15th, 2015. I almost said 2015. 2022. That June 15th really screwed me up. Carabath. There it is. We're off the gates. Out of the gates. Not a record, though. That was no, not a record. No, not at all. Last week was the record.
That's right.
Released June 15th, 2022. Written by Joby Harold and Andrew Stanton. And directed by the fabulous Deborah Chow. So this episode, of course, picks up with a incredible flashback scene to what is episode 2 era Obi-Wan Kenobi and Padawan Anakin Skywalker at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant training. They are on a patio and they start dueling, and it's basically just a seeing how they react and now the practicing their saber fighting, which was awesome to see. And they do this a couple times through the episode, flashing back to that fight. But then we immediately cut to a Star Destroyer, not any Star Destroyer, but Darth Vader's Star Destroyer, where he greets Reva by promoting her to Grand Inquisitor and setting a course to Jabim, where, of course, we know the resistance group, The Path, is based and hiding. So, and also where Obi-Wan Kenobi retreated to with Tala and Leia. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Leia and everybody arrive on Jabim, and of course they find out that they need to get everybody out of that base as quick as possible, because before they even have a chance to really discuss anything, the Star Destroyer arrives and the action begins. Of course, Leia's little droid Lola, reprogrammed by Reva, begins to sabotage the base, trapping the transport underground where they can't get the hangar door open. Leia volunteers to crawl in the little access hole that nobody can fit in except for a child, which, Leia's a child. So she goes in to try to fix it. In the meantime, multiple transports land loaded with stormtroopers that can actually hit things, with Reva and 2 purge troopers outside the main hangar door, and they start blasting away, and they get inside, and all action breaks loose. Kenobi tries to hold her off, but ends up with the ultimate plan of trying to surrender. He ends up surrendering, but it's all part of the plan to try to get to Reva, to get her to, provide time for the others to escape, but also to try to get through to Reva because he senses something else is going on. And he realizes through the Force that she was a youngling during Order 66. And it ends up she was that youngling that everybody assumed was her at the beginning from the very first part. Come to find out that she really doesn't want Kenobi. Her goal is ultimately to get close to Vader so she can get revenge, because she knows that he is Vader, that Vader is Anakin, excuse me, because she saw Anakin slaughtering the younglings and leading the troops. So she probably overheard somebody call him Lord Vader, because he was Vader at that point, remember?
Right.
So they take him back inside the base where they're holding him. Vader arrives, wastes no time, goes flying into the cave, and where they are trying to escape, he tries to hold the ship in place, which was really cool, but ends up he had the wrong ship, and a second transport launched right after that. And then Reva sees an opportunity and attacks Vader. We see a prolonged fight between Vader and Reva, of course, gets stabbed through the gut like every good Inquisitor does. And like every other good Inquisitor, she survives. She survives, and we get the reveal that the Grand Inquisitor, the original Grand Inquisitor, the Star Wars Rebels Grand Inquisitor, is still alive, and that they were playing her from the beginning, and that Vader knew who she was. He knew she was a youngling. He knew that she had an ulterior motive, as did the Grand Inquisitor. So they were playing her like a fiddle from the beginning. I had to go country on that one part. So of course Vader ends up leaving her for dead, and they walk away, and she finds a communications device dropped during the evacuation. Ends up being Kenobi's, with a pre-recorded message on it from Bail Organa, talking about Owen and the boy and protecting the boy. And if he doesn't hear back, he's going to Tatooine. So, of course, all she hears is the boy, Tatooine, and Owen. So she knows it's somebody close to Kenobi. So she figures she better go. But she's laying there bleeding. And that's how the episode ends. David, talk to me, my brother. What were your initial reactions after watching this heart attack?
Man, you did a great job summarizing it, man. You perfect segue for me, my friend. I mean, I honestly sound like a broken record, but I think, Deborah Chow and the whole crew, the actors, all of them, they do want to give me a heart attack. I'm going to experience a cardiac event. I thought so after 3, and then 4, now 5. They're not letting up. I don't know. I think I'm going to be in the hospital by the end of this series. I'm saying all this in jest and just saying how much I'm enjoying it. I guess it is. I'm getting lost in the moment. It might be suspension of disbelief. I'm genuinely worried about Obi-Wan. I'm worried about Leia, and I already know their future stories, like everyone else listening to this podcast, and really the majority of people watching Obi-Wan Kenobi this series. Most do. Most. I'm sure there's a few who don't. But I have to tell you, now I'm worried about Luke. And I know what I know what happens with Luke, and I'm worried about her coming there to Tatooine. Other initial reactions, I was really sad about Tala. I also was really impressed with the Vader versus Reva fight. That was excellent. Oh my gosh. Had to watch it a second time tonight. And also, at the end there, watching it the first time, I didn't really pick up on there being a second transport there. I was like, wait, what? And my eyes were drawn to Vader's hand and looking up at the ship he's holding. Again, watching it a second time tonight, I see that transport over in the corner. And so that was really cool how they did that. Kind of reminded me a little bit of, I guess it would be, was it The Last Jedi? Yes, The Last Jedi, where Rey thought she had killed Chewie, right? And that transport, was that The Rise of Skywalker. The Rise of Skywalker. And do you remember that when there was the two transports and they kind of explained it that way? Do you remember that, buddy? I don't know if you remember that, but anyway,
yeah, I remember.
Yeah. All that being said, just wow, just so impressed and so enjoying this, and just really kind of bummed it's going to be ending in a week. But again, very, very impressed.
Very good, very good. Simply said, this episode left me speechless by the end of it. I mean, I did not know what to say, how to say it. I couldn't form a coherent sentence for about an hour afterwards. I was bad. It was rough for me, my brother. This was such a fantastic episode. Wow. Holy wow. It was just absolutely amazing. Best episode to date. Of course, big thing for me is the reveal of the Grand Inquisitor, which means Rebels is not ruined. Should I had faith? I know everybody said I should have had faith. So, but I did. I waited, and my faith paid off, and we got that reveal. I love everything that happened. This was literally edge of your seat storytelling from the get-go. The trap being trapped in the hangar kind of reminded me of Last Jedi a little bit, when the First Order is coming in, and of course Luke goes out and faces Kylo, but this in this case it was kind of a little reverse, Obi-Wan going out. I loved Leia trying to fix things. I thought that was awesome, and I love how when she found Lola and Lola tried to attack her, she just flips him over. She's like, "Oh, that's not supposed to be there," and pulls off this little chip, and he goes back to normal. Sweet. I just thought that was hilarious. But everything about this was fantastic. I can honestly say, having confirmed Reva's background in this was awesome to finally see. I will say, after this episode, I do like that character a little bit more than I did before. I always liked it, but I do like that character a little bit more now, because there's a more complex story to her now. It's not just a youngling who went to the dark side because of trauma. I mean, she actually has thought this through. She has a plan. She is not there to hunt Jedi. She's there basically hunting Vader. I loved this storyline for her. So much more depth to the storyline, to her story. And I love that. And Vader, of course, just awesome as always. And it was fun. I enjoyed it. So that, as we say, is that. So Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into some of our talking points here, buddy. We got several here. So let's talk about what I just mentioned. Let's talk about Reva's past being revealed, because we get the flashbacks to during the fight to Order 66, when she is that youngling. We see her running, or we see her seeing everything happening. We see her through her eyes as Anakin and some of the members of the 501st come marching in. And as soon as he gets in, you see Anakin just start cutting down everything in his path with his saber. And her eyes, the little girl that they casted at played that role really good, because you could see just utter fear in her face, and her eyes got big, and almost some heartbreak too, because like most Jedi, she was taken at a young age. She doesn't remember family. The Jedi is all the family she knew. So she's seeing her family cut down in front of her. So there's definitely some heartbreak in there as well. What were your thoughts on her backstory, David?
Yeah, the you and I talked when we were covering, I guess it would be Book of Boba Fett, where Luke helps Grogu remember some things, and we get some clips from Order 66 in the Jedi Temple. You see Grogu's eyes really big, and we think about, was he traumatized? Is that why he's not talking the way we thought he would be talking? So we've kind of really looked at this a bit. I know back in 2005 when I saw Revenge of the Sith for the first time in the theaters, and seeing Anakin go in there as Vader, and it's implied that he kills them. There's a little clip, I guess, when Yoda and Ben get to the Jedi Temple, and now looking at this with Reva, it's just, and this is my job, dealing with people who are traumatized. The other thing I was thinking about, buddy, was my wife and I and my daughter, we watched the first 3 episodes of Stranger Things last night, season 4.
Okay. Yeah.
And I hadn't watched them yet. That came out I think over Star Wars Celebration weekend a couple weeks ago. But I finally got to sit down with them and watch it. And they put a disclaimer at the beginning, buddy, that said this was filmed over a year ago, this season of Stranger Things 4. And there's some really violent images of younger people who have died. But then watching this episode, they put a little disclaimer, right? Some images be disturbing, and I can't help but think about the school shooting, and that's why they did it for Stranger Things 4. Maybe why they put it on the front of this one as well. But it's kind of wild to see both of these shows. The timing, and been planned out, and we're gonna, probably they're filmed at least a year ago, and then they go, oh my gosh, we got to put these out, and we had a really big school shooting. So I mean, this is where my thoughts go through, and the traumatization. And do you ever, are you ever better? And that's, it's very difficult. I've told you, and I've told our listeners, I work with people with PTSD. It is very resistant to change. Trauma does not want to leave. And again, I've mentioned Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and all his work. The body keeps the score. Yeah, it just stays in there. So yes, and again, I'm going to talk about this in the psychology corner, just a lot of the psychological richness here. And so those are just some of my thoughts when I see this for Reva and her past, and it breaks my heart for her, because, it's just really, again, what Anakin and the Emperor did is just cause so much pain and suffering. So yeah, I think you can tell by you asked me, and I just kind of start riffing on all my thoughts on this, as well as bringing in some real life stuff that's been happening recently in our country. So those are some of my thoughts, buddy. How about you?
This whole series for me, and especially what we've been seeing Obi-Wan dealing with, and now seeing the trauma that Reva is dealing with, is it keeps me going back to that saying from Rebels that Kanan said, battle. Wow, I just blinked on it. All battles leave scars. Some you just can't see.
Yes. Well, yeah.
And this is what we're seeing in this episode. We're seeing characters, new character and old characters, dealing with scars that you can't see. Ben is dealing with the loss of his family. He's dealing with the loss of Anakin, thinking he had killed Anakin. He's dealing with the loss of thinking he killed his brother, only to find out that he didn't kill him. And then it's the dealing with, okay, well, now I've didn't kill him, and now he's this big evil on the planet, let loose on the galaxy. You have that going on. Then of course you have the trauma Reva's dealing with, that she has apparently been dealing with for years, where she is survived Order 66 as a youngling, and apparently, from what we find out from the Grand Inquisitor, found her in the gutters and brought her into the Inquisitorium, or whatever they call, and that's how she became the third sister. But she's still dealing with those scars because she wants revenge, and not just she really wants revenge on Anakin, but even against Kenobi, because she even tells Kenobi, "Why didn't you stop them? Why didn't you help us?" So the scars are there, and she literally feels not only the hurt and pain of the loss of her fellow younglings, but she also feels abandoned. She's dealing with the loss, an abandonment feeling by Obi-Wan and the other Jedi Masters.
Right, which I thought about that, buddy. Obviously Obi-Wan feels horrible about it. He's that's one of the things we talk about, right? Jedi they're not Superman. No. They're not, bulletproof and lasers coming. They're not. They can be hurt by blasters, lightsabers. Superman can't. So part of the whole thing with Kenobi is, he's, there's three things we talk about with God: omniscient, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, and then omnipresent, everywhere all at once. And I thought about it when she said that, and Obi-Wan and Yoda are not omnipresent. They're not everywhere at once, saving every youngling in the temple. I wish they were. Right?
No, they weren't even on Coruscant. One was fighting Grievous and the other was on Kashyyyk.
Right. Yoda was on Kashyyyk, and again, I think about parents. As parents, we'd like to be omnipresent. Love to protect my kids when they're driving every time, or if they travel someplace. Protect my mother up in Michigan. I'm in Florida. So I get it, because you're looking to your mentors, to your elders to protect you. At the same time, as kids, you're like, well, where are they? And part of it is, well, they're not gods, or the God, So I get it though. She's just like, where were you? And obviously Obi-Wan would have loved to have been there, to help. But they were trying to take care of issues elsewhere. I remember Matthew Stover, the way he wrote that in the novelization for Revenge of the Sith, just kind of splitting them up and getting them to different places. Here's Yoda out on Kashyyyk. Here's Obi-Wan on Utapau, right? Yeah, battling Grievous. So the Emperor is, divide and conquer, and so then people are hurt, and Reva is one of them. That all the Jedi Masters wish that they could be there and help and save them, but sometimes you get overwhelmed.
No, absolutely, and And well said, because they can't be everywhere at once. And it's just, it brings me to I was sitting here listening to you talking, and I was thinking about episode 1 when young Anakin looks at, is talking to Qui-Gon, and he goes, Jedis don't die. And Qui-Gon's like, I wish that were true.
Yeah.
Because, they have this godlike image amongst the people, but they're just as human as they are. And I mean, that happens even nowadays. You see that with certain celebrities. You see people that you think they're bigger than life, and they're just as red-blooded as you and me.
Yeah.
And when you see them pass, it's tragic. I think of Robin Williams, one of my favorite comedians, favorite actors, and how I laughed my butt off at every one of his movies. He was just an incredible talent, and to me, he was larger than life. And then for him to take his own life, that was rough. It just wakes you up to reality that there is no larger than life.
Yeah, well, it's like they were saying, like the part of the problem with Superman is, there's a kryptonite, but like with Batman, there's more of a worry there. That's why, I do worry about Ben. I worry about Leia. I worry about Luke, and the Jedi and Yoda, because they can be hurt. Whereas Superman, unless someone's got some kryptonite, there's really, right, that's always been kind of part of the story difficulty, right? Is, he's OP, he's overpowering. Whereas the Jedi, they're, like we said, they're not omnipotent. They can be hurt. They got some great powers, but the way that Lucas conceived them is that they do have feet of clay. They are imperfect. They can be hurt, and if we didn't worry about them, like, well, why watch this, right? Yeah, we know Obi-Wan's fine. We know Luke's fine. He's fine. Anakin's going to be fine. Oh, wait, crap, he turned to the dark side. Yeah, bad things can happen to him. So it keeps the interest there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It certainly does. And with Reva's past leads into pretty much our next talking point, which I want to get into, of course, is Reva and Kenobi in this episode. Because she's pretty much hell-bent on getting Kenobi, as she's been every episode. And she has him cornered. She has him trapped. And Obi-Wan tries to talk to her, and this is how we get the background. He's trying to negotiate because what does Grievous say? The negotiator. When Kenobi shows up. And he reaches out through the Force through the door and feels, and that's how he pretty much reads her and how we get her backstory. And then that gives him something to work on with her, because now he realizes she's after Vader. She's not after him. She's after Vader primarily. That's her ultimate goal. So she ends up cutting through the door, and then the fight ensues, and Vader, to help allow time for the people to escape, he surrenders, and then he has a talk with her outside. He's like, she's like, Vader's coming. He's like, I know. He's like, but work with me and we can end this. And she's like, why won't you? He'll see it coming. He goes, no, he won't. He'll be focused on me. And it goes back to the flashbacks that we see Anakin having. Or that they reveal with Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting, and how overconfident Anakin gets, and his power and his strength. He gets so blinded by the fight that he doesn't even think about the other options or what else could happen, and he just gets so focused on winning, he loses perspective. And Anakin knows, or Obi-Wan knows, Anakin hasn't changed. He still has that loss of perspective. So he's kind of egging her along. We need to partner up. She's like, I don't need anybody. So what are your thoughts on Anakin, Obi-Wan trying to play a little mind game? It's kind of playing in on her trauma to try to get her to slip up, which will allow everybody else to escape.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that clearly, Obi-Wan does do that. It does work. But I thought that one of the things that was the most interesting to me, and I think it was in particular when they were talking through the door, Reva and Kenobi, was her saying, can you really do that? Can you kill him? You could see Ben's face, and he didn't want to do it on Mustafar, and so when she asked him that question, that really stuck out to me. If he had the chance, would he do it? That's his Padawan. Would he do it? Maybe he would, all things considered, and knowing what Vader's doing across the galaxy, maybe it's a little bit easier than when you see Anakin there on that little hovercraft over molten lava, and you're telling him not to jump. But I thought that was really well done, how the writers had Reva ask him that question. I do think, as I'm looking at our next talking point, I think the thing that ultimately Reva does is she ends up doing what Vader does. Like, there's an overconfidence, right? And you can lead into that if you want to. But I think that's, I guess, the answer to kind of this Reva and Kenobi and Reva versus Vader. If you're her and you know how powerful Vader is, I guess you got to ask, how distracted are you going to be, Vader, with Kenobi? Particularly when he's on a transport and flying away.
Yep.
And then it's gone, and then she comes up behind him, and Vader's not distracted by Kenobi. So to go back to your question, yeah, Kenobi, he did work her, and ultimately he saves those people, which is what he wanted to do. Yes. More than her or Vader.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And go right ahead. It goes right into the Reva. This ties right into the Reva Vader topic, which is our next talking point. Because she she gives in, and she basically takes his advice, and as the ship flies off and Vader's just staring at it, she comes in from behind and tries to strike him down, and Vader, just basically using the Force, just stops her swing, and he literally is just dominating her.
Yep. Just
simply by using the Force. And he ends up, and I love the scene, the shot where she's getting beat. He's kind of pushing her back with the Force, and she gets her lightsaber spinning, like we see in Rebels, like the Inquisitors do, the spinning lightsabers. Why she didn't put it over her head and fly away, I don't know.
Should have,
because it didn't go well for her after that. But we see her spin. We see Vader stop the blade from spinning, rip it from her hands, split it in two. Then he tosses one half back to her, like, "All right, let's fight. Pick it up."
Right, just toying with her. Right.
Let's do this. And she picks it up, and they fight. And obviously, she is no match for him at all. And they fight, and he ends up ripping the lightsaber from her hand with the Force, and having both sabers again, and she's on her knees, and he ends up stabbing her through the gut.
Yeah.
The famous Inquisitor gut shot.
Right.
And of course, to me, one thing I really loved about this episode, and it kind of ties into this conversation is I loved how the episode kind of mirrored the episode 2 flashbacks we were getting.
Yes.
We have Anakin just giving everything to beat Kenobi down, demanding that he yield. Just say you're beaten. And he's literally on his knees, holding it and just beating on it. Anakin's just beating on the lightsaber. And then Kenobi ends up losing his lightsaber. And then he's spinning around the floor, dancing around, avoiding the saber shots, and ends up winning because by ripping the lightsaber out of Anakin's hand.
Yeah.
And I love that scene because it mirrors what happens to Reva in that scene, because he rips the lightsaber from her hand. So he uses the same move that Kenobi used. But I love how the fact that it mirrors is after Kenobi rips the saber from his hand, he looks at Anakin and goes, You're overconfident. Your need to prove yourself is your undoing. Mm-hmm. By trying to prove yourself, you're leading yourself to defeat. And he goes, until you figure that out, a Padawan you will be. And then we cut to this fight with Reva, and he rips it from the hand, and she's literally on her knee, just staring up at Anakin. And of course, she's having flashbacks to when she was a youngling, staring at him coming. And Vader looks at her, and he's like, he calls her youngling. Do you not think I would remember you, youngling? He recognizes, and this is where he reveals that he's just been playing her.
Yeah.
And I love how the whole thing just mirrors each other. The flashbacks mirror what's going on in the story. And really plays into that fight with Vader, because he is then basically showing what he has learned from Kenobi.
Yeah.
He's learned, and he's still learning from his master.
He's but the learner. Yes, the learner.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I guess it's her overconfidence, she does the same thing, she does what Anakin does in that fight, back with or practice sparring and all this kind of stuff. But she just, to think you're going to come up behind Vader and he's not going to sense you or whatever, like your anger, your frustration, etc., is just foolhardy. It got the best of her. And I was, again, I get it. She's probably thinking he's by himself. There's no stormtroopers around. Let's try this. But it was her undoing, with confidence.
Oh, absolutely, it was. So it was just an incredible story. But it's not over there. There was a lot more stuff happening in this episode, and we're going to keep talking about that. But first off, we do need to take a quick break, so bear with us. We will be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David here. We're talking part 5 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So some of the other storylines that were going on through this is we see Tala. And she's been a new character we've seen for the last couple episodes. And we see her make pretty much the ultimate sacrifice. Her and her loader droid make the ultimate sacrifice in this episode. While the stormtroopers are pretty much infiltrating the base, they're fighting him back. The droid gets hit, and he's just taking shot after shot, and he's breaking down essentially. And she is hurt. She's sitting there, and the droid basically drops to his knees in front of her and kind of just shields her and is just trying to protect her. And then she pulls out a thermal detonator. If he goes, we're all going. And gives Kenobi just enough time to close the door before she sets off this thermal detonator, taking out Lord knows how many troopers behind her.
Mm-hmm.
And really paying, she always made the statement, or she made the statement in the last episode, she didn't belong in the Empire. I never belonged here, she told Reva. And she had found where she had belonged with this group, with the Path, and to the point that she was willing to sacrifice. What are your thoughts on Tala, her the character as a whole, and her sacrifice, David?
Oh, I really loved her as a character, and consistent with a lot of other Star Wars fans and Tala fans, I was hoping that she would make it through this series and we would see her in Andor. But that does not look to be the case. Unlike the Inquisitors, who can come back, I think she's done, as well as Ned B, like you said, her loader droid there.
Yeah.
I really liked her character. And in fact, going back to what I'd mentioned a little bit ago, talking about Reva's past revealed with the trauma there, you hear Tala tell a story to Obi-Wan about how, 14 people were rounded up. Most were adults, like 6 were kids, and they were killed by the Empire. And her telling that story again, I just the real world, kind of ties in, right now with this. And again, I don't know, I can't help but think about that, where when they were filming these, I don't know that there was, a lot of thought. We hadn't had a school shooting like that in a while. But I think, she tells that story, right, buddy? And again, you learn more about her and what she's trying to do and trying to help. And when people do lay down their life, that ultimate sacrifice, it's very powerful. It's very emotional. I had tears in my eyes because I was like, oh my gosh, one, she's helping, all of these people, and then obviously one of our favorite characters, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and stuff like that. It means a lot when people sacrifice, and it really brings a lot of emotional weight, to the character, but also to the series and to these episodes. So we've met her in part 3, part 4, now part 5, and she's gone. But it makes this more powerful. I really enjoyed her character. Really enjoyed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
did.
did. I loved the character. I again, like you, I was hoping we would see more of her. But the sacrifice fit so well. I think there was a lot of story to be told there, and I would love to see, whether it be in a comic book or even on screen, a story of the Path.
Oh yes.
And seeing her help get Jedi and Force sensitive people out of the way. I think that would just be a tremendous show to see, and have people coming in like Quinlan Voss and others that have gone through and get to see it. And each week can be her getting somebody else to safety. I think that would be incredible. But Tala, I think, is has a lot more complexity than what we've seen. And I'm definitely someone who I hate to see go so quickly.
Yeah.
And so fast.
Me too.
So, well, ultimately we end up at the end of the episode. And this is our talking point before we get into some of the stuff you want to talk about from the comic that ties into everything, is the final scenes, which bring us to basically a new plot twist, a new threat. during the episode, we see before he goes and surrenders, Obi-Wan gives his communicator, his lightsaber and everything to Haja.
Yep.
Haja, who we see in the earlier episodes. And during the course of the evacuation, Haja drops the communicator, and that's how, after she's been stabbed and abandoned by Vader and the Inquisitors, Reva finds it lying there, damaged, but and it's damaged, kind of broken, but it still plays part of the message. And she hears, "Help the boy," and Tatooine and Owen. Mm-hmm. So she knows, got a feeling that's tied to Kenobi somehow. So the ends, and we see the final thing is just the camera pulling away from Luke as he's sleeping in his bed. Mm-hmm. So we now know that Luke is in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
So, which makes this even more interesting.
Yeah.
So now Luke's under fire, which means we will end up back on Tatooine, I got a feeling, which makes sense because something has to happen in order for Owen to, tolerate Ben, to want him just totally away from the family.
Yeah. Yeah, you wonder if Reva ends up going there, not Vader. Mm-hmm. But you're sitting there, gosh, she wants Vader, not really Kenobi, and not Owen, not any of those people, so it's kind of like, is she a threat to Luke? Is she not? I mean, because she doesn't, the only thing I think is like what you said. It's like, well, if Owen or this kid that Bale's talking, anything to pull Kenobi out again and bring Vader closer to her again. That's all I can think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I don't know where this is going to lead. I know we got episode 6 coming up next week, or part 6, I should say. So I got a feeling it's going to be a explosive episode.
Yeah,
because there's going to be a lot to we still got to get Leia back to Bail. We got to figure out what's going on with this Luke situation. I mean, there's a lot to tie up in this final episode. and then it's the what happens to is if there's another, how does, I don't know. There's a lot to see. There's a lot to see, a lot to speculate. But I will say this, because we don't speculate. We don't do anything like this. I want to make a prediction.
All right.
Luke and Leia meet face to face in the next episode.
Ooh.
But they're so young, they don't ever remember meeting.
Oh, man. Yeah, and then like Bale would take her back to Alderaan from Tatooine, you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I like that, buddy.
So that's my prediction. And I know if that happens, a lot of people will lose their minds, be upset. I think it would be absolutely amazing because I can't tell you how many people as a kid I have met, with my parents being missionaries and going to church after church after church growing up. I was at a different church literally every service, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday. I was different church all the time, all over the state of Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Carolinas, everywhere. Yeah. I can't tell you how many people that I've met doing that I couldn't tell. They could walk up, slap me in the face, and I would have no clue who they are. Oh. So it's very possible for two kids to meet once and never remember they met.
Yeah.
So my prediction, especially with this scenario just happening, and based on the communication from Bale, is Bale's going to end up on Tatooine. Mm-hmm. Obi-Wan's going to have to take Leia there. Oh. Luke and Leia will meet, and that's where it ends. So that's my prediction. That's my prediction. We'll see if any of it comes right, but I wanted to get it out there. So
I like that.
All right, all right, all right. So, David, I know like you said earlier, you spent the weekend reading comic books to make connections for our to the series, like you promised everybody you would. So, what did you find out reading the Vader series?
Oh man, I read all 25 issues. I have the four trade paperbacks. Uh, um, so they're let me make sure so the four are Imperial Machine, Legacies End, The Burning Seas, and Fortress Vader. And part of why I wanted to read it is not only because I knew the Inquisitors were in there, but also because I'd said, wait, well, how did he end up on Mustafar? And of course, in this series, we see Vader in his
Mhm.
castle, talking to Reva that one time, and then we see him walk over and look out the window and stuff. So I'm like, wait, I got to go back through this just because I loved it anyways, and I wanted to get it all back in my head. And oh my gosh, there's so much. Let me just hit a few points. I told Aaron I wanted to put this under our talking points. There's a few here that you know um, uh, don't exactly tie into the series, but I just wanted to share these with you, and then the rest that really do tie in here. Um, as I'm reading the 25 issues, one of the ways that Vader finds a Jedi, with a lightsaber to take that crystal and bend it. I'll talk about that later in my psychology corner. Like bend it to your will, make it bleed. Is that Vader's looking for any Jedi that have taken the Barash vow. And those are Jedi that refrain from any activities related to the Order, the Jedi Order, and it's a type of penance. And you hear Vader talking about it. And just side note, and I don't know if people have watched all 4 days of the live stream. I did. That's the kind of Star Wars fan I am. Aaron and I have talked about it. Be there without being there, and it
Yep.
really had some great stuff. A lot of interviews, and it really keeps you up to speed, and it kind of bounce you around to do different panels. Watch those. But this was an interview that Christina Ariel was doing with Charles Soule, Kevin Scott, and Claudia Gray on the Star Wars Celebration live stage. And I don't know if a lot of people, probably Star Wars fans did because they're so detail oriented, but he made a little comment, Charles Soule did. He said, if you've heard me talk about the Barash vow, look for that coming in some form to Star Wars Publishing. So, this Vader run was 2017. Here we are in 2022, and Charles Soule, almost like Dave Filoni, here he is, setting stuff up, and stuff is paying off as the years pass. So I wanted to point that out because when I was reading it, I'm like, oh yeah, and I just remember hearing Charles Soule talk about the Barash vow on the Star Wars Celebration live stage. Just wanted our listeners to know that. Another side note, the Jedi who does take the Barash vow is Master Infilon. And in issue 3, I saw it. And Emma sent you a picture of this too, Aaron, but you've got it. In digital form, you see Master Infilon says to Vader, quote, "And then I will restore the light of the Jedi to the galaxy." And I read that, I'm like, wait a minute, this came out in 2017. And of course, we all know that The Light of the Jedi is the title of the first High Republic novel by Charles Soule, right?
Yeah.
Light of the Jedi. So there you go. Little drop he did there 5 years ago. Probably was writing it in 2015, 16. We see it in 17, but then, of course, High Republic doesn't come out for quite a while. Another side note. In issue number 17, Master Bar is this Jedi who is on Mon Cala, and he is consulting with King Lee Char, who we meet in the Clone Wars. And I actually took a picture of this and I sent it to Aaron because this really ties into, what we're seeing here in the Kenobi series. But you see Master Bar telling one of his followers, Verla, she's, helping him battle, and they've kind of been whittled down. But he says to her, quote, "There must be other Jedi left in the galaxy. I have found no records of Kenobi's death or Yoda's. Perhaps Quinlan Vos survives." And I've read that, and I was like, holy mackerel. When we see Quinlan Vos, mentioned in part 3, right? We talked about that when when Ewan McGregor as Kenobi is looking at the wall, the path, and Quinlan was here, Quinlan Voss. And so, here's Charles Soule again, 5 years ago minimum, maybe it was 6 years ago again, depending on when he wrote it. And clearly, Story Group is telling him, yes, you can put that in the comic. And then here we see again Ewan McGregor talking about Quinlan Voss. I'm curious to see if we were going to see him here, maybe not. But wanted to point that out to our listeners. Also, just some other great information related to this Kenobi series. Now, Aaron and I have covered Rebels, Star Wars Rebels, and we do see the Grand Inquisitor. And I guess that first, what did we say, Aaron? It was October of 16, was it October of 13? 14? 14, right? 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, yeah, 4 seasons. So it would be October of 14, we see the Grand Inquisitor. However, here in issue 6 of this Vader run, it then gives a lot of the backstory. We just see the Grand Inquisitor, right, in Rebels. Correct. And voiced by Jason Isaacs. Is that correct? Or
that is correct.
Jason Isaacs. So here, it's so beautifully done. We meet the Grand Inquisitor. We see how him and Vader kind of came together, orchestrated by the Emperor. We see the Emperor introduce the Inquisitorius, which we see in this series. We see the 5th brother, the 6th brother, 8th brother, 2nd sister, and 9th sister. And later, towards the end of the series, we do see the 10th brother, who's kind of in that battle when I just mentioned Master Bar and Verla are running away. Well, 10th brother got killed there. That's why we don't see him. Now, we don't see the 3rd sister, Reva, in this, but we see the Inquisitorius introduced. And it was kind of neat because I was going back through it again last night, and I was looking, was it last night or the night before? And in issue 20, the Emperor tells Vader, yes, the Inquisitor, they are yours, but they will no longer be here. They were in the Works District there on Coruscant. Really cool, kind of where we see Vader or Palpatine and Count Dooku talking to each other at the end of episode 2 as the Clone Wars start. And so he says, yes, they are yours, but they will no longer be here. I will move the Inquisitorius to a new base off-world, like off of Coruscant. And I said maybe to Fortress Inquisitorius. The reason why I wasn't fully sure, because I've heard people talk, Aaron, about Jedi Fallen Order and how I think the 9th sister is in that. And also, I don't know if they have a stop before they get to Fortress Inquisitorius. I'm just guessing that when the Emperor says that in the comic, maybe they didn't tell Charles Soule, where that would be, and maybe it was moved from Coruscant to Fortress Inquisitorius, which we have seen quite a bit of in this series. So just wanted to mention all that because so much in there from 2017, 5 years ago, that Charles Soule is putting into these issues. And so a lot of payoff from reading it. And then after we do our final thoughts, I'll do a psychology corner and tie even more from this incredible 25-issue run. I'll tie it into everything we've been talking about. So there you go.
Very cool. Very cool. Very good. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So let's go ahead and go into our final thoughts here about this episode, about part 5, I should say. To me, fantastic episode. I loved this episode, every minute of it. I say I've loved all of this series so far. It has just been perfect for me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It has been just so much fun to watch and to enjoy. So, and I just don't see how it can be wrapped up in one more episode. And it breaks my heart we only have one more episode left. So it's going to be crazy, that's for sure. It's going to be fun. I loved everything about it. I loved finding out about Reva's past and being such a show based on Obi-Wan's trauma and him dealing with that. To have our main villain dealing with her own trauma is even better. It just complicates the story even more. And I love it. I love seeing Vader again. I've just loved seeing Vader throughout this series. It's been fun to see the deliciously evil, as to steal a phrase from David, Vader that we got to see at the end of Rogue One, to see it even more complex in this series and in this episode. He just plays the way him and Obi-Wan are playing mental or fighting each other mentally. It's just so much fun. So good. And of course, the best news at the end of the day, Rebels isn't ruined. Thank you, Deborah Chow. Grand Inquisitor lives. David, what are your final thoughts, my friend?
Yeah, consistent with you, buddy. I'm so impressed with this series. I have seen, it's our friend who does I Am Star Wars Time on Instagram.
Okay.
He posted a thing showing that the final episode. I know you and I see episodes. They call them parts. Why they call it parts versus episodes, I don't know. Well, chapters, right? I guess, and
yeah.
But that it's a roughly 90, I think a minute or an hour, forgive me, an hour and 33 minutes, something like that. So roughly 90 minutes, I think, and I hope it is. That would give more time to wrap up, kind of what, Aaron and I were talking about. There's a lot to wrap up. And that, I was thinking about it earlier today. That would give us roughly 6 to 6.5 hours, again, depending on how long that finale is, roughly that amount of time of Kenobi, Leia, Vader, etc., all that goodness, instead of a 2.5 hour movie that was originally planned, right, several years ago. And so, I guess I bring that up to people to say that I really am trying to see this, even like Aaron and I were saying about parts, almost like a long 6.5 hour movie with various parts. But really, I'm trying to, see this, all the way through. Little side note, my understanding is that perhaps they're showing all 5 episodes at some various theaters, and then they cap it off with a finale followed by a Q&A. But I don't know with who, if that would be Deborah Chow or some of the actors or whatever. But I have not seen anything announced around here. I would love to do that. Just watch it all, right in a row, kind of like what Aaron and I have been talking about. So very thankful for 6.5 hours of this versus 2.5 hours. Just really want to point that out. And like Aaron, I really don't know how they're going to wrap this up, but I'm excited to see it. And, Aaron just made a prediction, Luke and Leia meeting. I still want to, hear or see Qui-Gon, because, they've been setting this up. We've seen in previous parts of this series, and Aaron and I have talked about it, we've seen Obi-Wan trying to connect with Qui-Gon. And so I would really love to hear him or see him, either one. It would be great. So there you go.
Very good. Very good. Very good. And of course, we want to hear from you. We want to know what your thoughts are. But first, we're going to give you our grades.
That's right.
That's right. So, for me, of course, as you know, we grade each episode like you would be if you were in school, A, B, C, D, or F. Easy, hand down for me. This was an A+ episode. Hands down. No questions asked. How about you, David?
Absolutely. A+ as well. And I'm wondering if it's going to be an A+++++ next week. I'm feeling it. So yeah, definitely this one, A+.
Very good. Very good. And of course, we want to know what you think of Obi-Wan Kenobi Part 5. You can let us know via social media, of course, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at SW Reactions. and Twitter at SW Reactions Pod, or email us, Aaron, or email show. You can email the show at StarWarsReactions.com. Wow, Carabast. Wow. Okay.
Thank you.
Anywho, here we go. So, how about I'm just all over the place now. I don't know what's wrong with me, David. Let's take a stop. Let's take some of our James Arnold Taylor approved water.
That's right.
There we go. So, as David mentioned earlier, we have an all new psychology corner this week. David, brother, take it away.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's been I mentioned it earlier, a lot of psychological richness in the Kenobi series. And, I've been doing some smaller kind of psychology corners sprinkled in versus a formal one at the end. But, I wanted to give our listeners a bigger psychology corner that brings together some different aspects of this Disney Plus Kenobi series, Charles Soule's 2017 run of Vader that I mentioned, 25 issues. And I wanted to tie in step 3 from the AA literature, right? That's a 12-step program. So I wanted to tie all this in and just, again, make our listeners good psychologists. Again, that's what my professors always taught. And 3 things: provide a safe place to vent, always support your clients. Number 3, make them good psychologists. And so that's what I've done throughout my career. So let's do it. So let's start with, again, the Darth Vader run, 2017, 4 trade paperbacks, 25 issues. And I'm going to set the stage for really what I want to convey to our listeners tonight to help them to learn and just see, how when you try to force something and bend something to your own kind of will and way, it doesn't work. So let's pull it together. Okay, in issue 1, after Vader gets his legs, gets the suit, etc., what you see in this issue, it's so beautifully done. It shows the Emperor bringing Vader over to watch Masameda throw a bunch of lightsabers into a big cauldron and stuff. And they're talking. And the first lesson the Emperor teaches Vader after he gets the suit, right? This is right after episode 3, is that kyber crystals are alive and they can feel pain. So he tells Vader to pour his pain into a Jedi's kyber crystal to make it bleed, to turn it crimson, right? And even the Emperor says, the color of your rage. And a few pages later, you see the Emperor dropping off Vader on this planet to start this process of tracking down a Jedi and a lightsaber. The Emperor says, quote, embrace the dark side, bend it to your will, and it will provide everything you need, unquote. So again, you're seeing the Emperor tell him, this living thing, a kyber crystal, bend it to what you want. Make it feel pain, make it feel rage. What horrible things to say to somebody, right? And again, embrace the dark side, bend it to your will. Move forward to issue number 8. It gives us a little glimpse into the helmet of Momin. This helmet plays a crucial role in the building of Vader's castle on Mustafar, which, again, I'd said last week and maybe a couple other of our episodes. I said to Aaron, wait, what did Vader choose to build his castle on Mustafar? Was it the Emperor? What was it? And so I'm going to come back around to that in just a second, but I wanted to point that out. And so ultimately, and I have it here, it was Vader. But we go from issue 8, we fast forward to issues 20 and 21, and Vader's the one who chooses it after the Emperor offered Naboo. He says, oh, my home planet. Or wait, no, Tatooine. You can, level it to glass, he says to Vader. But Vader ultimately chooses Mustafar, got the sight of how he is deformed and defeated and loses Padme, but he chooses it kind of not really, to please the Emperor or anything else, but from the main point that Vader had learned when he took the crystal several issues before. He took Master Infla's crystal and found, there's a dark side energy nexus there at the core of Mustafar. And so it really reveals Vader's underlying desire was to open a door to save Padme. And I would really encourage our listeners to read those episodes or those issues 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, when he's on Mustafar, and how that's drawn and the way that Charles Soule writes it. It's incredible. It's just incredible. So wanted to answer that for our listeners and for myself. Okay, it was Vader who chose it. And maybe it's also for him to connect to his pain and drive him even further. But in issue 22, okay, now the reason why I mentioned moment a bit before, you do initially see his helmet in the Jedi archives when Jocasta Nu goes back to the Jedi archives to get a list of Force-sensitive kids in the galaxy. And you see the helmet there, just a little glimpse. And then later you see the Emperor give it to Vader before he goes to Mustafar to build his castle. But in issue number 22, as we're getting to the end, we see Momin, this character, and he shares these statements that really lead into step 3 from AA. He says, quote, "The dark side is sacred, but it is also hungry. It burns like a flame, an inferno. It must be fed always. It seeks fuel. If you do not feed it, then it will feed on you." And again, I share all that to say that you see these persons, whether it's Vader or the Emperor or Momin, trying to work with something that will ultimately ruin you, right? They try to work with it. They try, but it doesn't work. This is where I wanted to bring in step 3. And I think I've mentioned in previous episodes that I had gotten a copy of the big book from a client of mine who was many years sober at that time. He wanted me to have a copy, and I very much wanted one. And the big book has 12 steps in there, but step 3, I tell you, they're all fascinating, but step 3 really ties in here of the big book. And here's how step 3 reads, and I have it verbatim quoted, and I have it right here. Quote, step 3 is, "Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him." Now, some people think of higher power, etc. So AA says that, as we understood him. Very interesting, because no human wants to do this. We want to do our will. Anakin wants to do his will. The Emperor wants to bend the dark side in the galaxy to his will. And you see a lot of that, as Charles Soule puts that. There's so much more in those issues, by the way, for people to really to learn and chew on. It's so good. But I wanted to add this. There's the big book. There's also another book by AA. The big book came out in 1939, the original version. This other one's called 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. All my clients who have been in AA call it the 12 and 12. And it gives more detail about each of those 12 steps. And when you read the chapter where it explains step 3, even in more detail, again, made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God as we understood him. It's so beautiful, because I have this marked. Now, this book was written in 1953, okay? So probably before any of our listeners were born, before I was born or Aaron was born. But let me read you a quote that I took from the book so I could share it with our listeners. Speaking about not wanting to turn our will over to God or a higher power, because again, us humans know everything, we've got this, right? Well, here it goes. This sentence is so powerful, and to steal a Dan Z word, poignant. Quote, "The philosophy of self-sufficiency is not paying off. Plainly enough," and here's the best part here, Aaron, "it is a bone-crushing juggernaut whose final achievement is ruin." unquote. And I would ask our listeners and anybody who's listening, does that sound like what Moman just said a minute ago? Does that sound like the dark side? Our self-will leads to ruin. and we see that in Vader in episode 3. He wants his will. I'm going to save Padme, right? I'm going to do this. And Obi-Wan's trying to help him. Yoda's trying to help him, but Anakin knows it all, right? Our listeners know this, and makes horrific decisions, ends up killing younglings in the temple. Obviously, Obi-Wan and Yoda see that. We're seeing flashbacks of it in this episode here that premiered yesterday. And now, here we are 10 years into Vader being in that suit, right? And we still see the same thing. And even Aaron spelled it out so well, what that initial flashback scene tried to show. Anakin's going to do his will. I don't want to learn from Obi-Wan. I got this. I don't care what Master Yoda says. I got this. I'm going to dominate my desire to win and to control. I got this. And again, it is a bone-crushing juggernaut whose final achievement is ruin. And I was thinking, Aaron, when I look at Vader, here he is 10 years into that suit in the Kenobi series. And I thought, yeah, he walks around, but we've heard many Star Wars fans and authors talk about this. He's just in a prison, a black mechanical prison. And that's the final achievement is ruin. And so I wanted to tie all that together, before we get into this final episode next week. But again, wanted to bring stuff from the 2017 Vader run, AA, and what we're seeing in this series. So there's a big psychology corner for our listeners, my friend. So there you go.
Well done. Excellent. Good to have the psychology corner back. It is I always learn so much. Thank you, David.
Absolutely, brother.
Love it. Love it. And if somebody has any questions for you about your psychology corner or just wants to talk Star Wars with you in general, how would they go about doing that?
Absolutely. Very quickly, Twitter, it is @David_Modders, Modders. There's an S on there. Instagram is just my name, David Modders. And and then our email at David@StarWarsReactions.com, our website and our emails. Yeah, there you go.
Good. Very good. Very good. And of course, if you want to talk Star Wars with me, the best way to do that is on Twitter @TAHarris121079, or of course, email me, Aaron @StarWarsReactions.com as well. So, are you ready for this week's Dad Joke of the Week?
I think I'm ready, buddy. I'm ready.
All right. Everybody sit back, grab your spit rags, and here we go. Did you know, David, that Obi-Wan Kenobi was once arrested?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was charged with causing grievous bodily injury.
Oh, groaner. Oh.
Grievous. The negotiator. Oh, Lord.
Oh.
All right. Well, David, I have had a blast tonight. How about you?
I had a blast, man. Had a lot to cover. Had a lot I wanted to share with the listeners, and I think we got it done.
Very good. We did. We had a great time, and we want to thank you, David. It's been a blast. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. Y'all are awesome. Y'all are the best. Take care of each other. Be nice. Be kind. Do something nice. Do something good for somebody this week. You'll enjoy that. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
If you'd like to share your thoughts, you can email us at show@starwarsreactions.com for our show notes and the latest news from the Star Wars universe. Visit our website at www.starwarsreactions.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at SWReactionsPod or on Facebook at Star Wars Reactions. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on iTunes. This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.